Thank you so much for tuning in my show, William Wallace for America. With me today on my Finding Freedom Forum here on Monday is Jean Nigro, who I met at CPAC, who's always looking for freedom. Jeannie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here, William. Good to see you again. I missed CPAC this year, so I miss seeing you.
Yeah, I tried. I didn't see it at the Washington D.C. one, but I tell you, you're always someone that I love talking to. Just for so many reasons, and they can see the other podcasts that we did. But I thought you'd be perfect today for my Finding Freedom
Mhm.
Forum because I believe that we're losing freedom in America. And oftentimes when I talk to people, I find different ways that other people think that we're losing our freedom. And that's where I had some questions for you. Where do you think that we are losing freedom in America?
Well, excellent question, William. And I just about 5 minutes ago got home from a meeting. I was over with an organization that works with the UN because I'm living here in Manhattan. And it really was a perfect segue to this conversation because there's lots of ways we could talk about freedom, but what I'm really recognizing more than ever, and especially obviously at global organizations like the UN and the WHO, is this whole issue of calling everything a human right. And so abortion is a human right, transgender is a human right, the LGBTQ, the sexual and reproduction is a right. So as long as you can call anything a right or a human right, then it's like a bubble around it. And then everybody outside of that bubble loses their freedom. So I think this is where we're going because everything is under this umbrella of human rights. And so then we can't touch it. So if we say anything that we don't agree with or that the Bible doesn't agree with, any of these human rights, then that's where we're losing our freedoms. And I think that it's just going to expand. We've got this human right for transgender, human right, for abortion, human right for everything. Well, what's next? I have the human right to take revenge. I have the human right, to be a victim. I have the human right to do all these different things. And the more this bubble of human rights gets bigger, the more those who don't agree with those rights are losing their freedoms. And the biggest one, I think, really is that, obviously freedom of speech, but freedom of religion. Because all of these, if you notice, everything I mentioned that's in that bubble are things that people that are in agreement with the Bible may not be in agreement with those issues being called human rights. And then how can you go against human rights? Then you lose your religious freedom. And I just read an article about the UN talking already about how this LGBTQ whatever right supersedes religious right, and that they should have a right to access any spirituality and religion that they want. And so we're really, and in health, this human right for health. And so again, losing freedoms on that, and coming from the WHO, losing sovereignty of our nation with calling anything a pandemic.
And I like what you're saying about making everything a human right. When we as individuals are born with our freedoms and liberties endowed to us by our Creator, and what I think you're touching on, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that once you make everything a right, it's almost like they're trying to make it an additional right above either a constitution or the
That's right.
Bible or whatever.
That's right.
When that happens, government gets involved and they regulate it. And once it becomes all these rights keep being added on as a human right, that's when government gets involved and protects the rights.
That's right.
But what it really ends up happening is everyone's rights ends up shrinking. And the people who think that they're gaining a right by saying, hey, it's my right to be this or that or the other thing, sure, it's their right. But when they scream about it being a right and they make it a right that's mandated by law
That's
or
right.
government or the World Health Organization, or where the case may be, everyone loses their rights.
Exactly.
And
Like I
and
said,
then
the bubble holds all of those, the right for abortion, the right to be transgender, the right, whatever it is. But when you call it a human right, how can you touch someone's human right? And
right,
all of a sudden,
exactly.
that bubble, they're untouchable. And then all the people outside of that bubble lose all of their freedoms. And rights.
Why do you think people aren't seeing it?
I think because they're calling it human right, and it's so deceptive. And that's what they do. They give these wonderful, names. You know how bills are named in Congress. The Women for Freedom. How can you be against these things?
Right, exactly.
But yet, what does that really mean? Health. The right for health care. Well, that right for health care may include abortion, may include all these vaccines, whatever it is that
might include that that people over 70 get mandated to to go off and die with assisted suicide, because the government can't afford to take care of them for whatever reason it may be.
But then they can call it a human right, but then when you call it a human right or civil rights or however they want to, then it becomes law. See, then it gets attached, like exactly what you're saying. It gets attached to a law, and then the other people not only lose their freedoms, but they get punished for having a different opinion or for speaking that they don't. They may not even speak against the bubble, but right. They say they don't agree with the bubble, and they're punished for it because it becomes a legal argument versus just a matter of opinion, and that's where we're going.
And I see it, and all over the world, it's becoming more and more reality. And they're trying, and now they're beta testing in other countries where if you if you try to speak out against someone else's right, then you're the one that's banned from social media.
That's right. You get punished. There's a punishment from going against the law, and anything that's a human right is law.
Well, Jeannie, what are you doing to protect it? What are you doing on your platform? How can people find more about you?
Well, what I'm doing is just trying to expose lies wherever I can. I wrote the book, The Lies We Believe About Faith and Politics, The Way Forward, trying to expose the lies there with some of the, faith and politics. That's all I have to say. There's a lot of lies in that area. So you can check out that book for sure. And like I said, I was just meeting over, and I'm going to be doing some work with this organization at the UN and meeting with delegates there and trying to show them, again, even at the UN, these things are called, how can they be against rights for health?
Right.
Health. Well, of course you want, nations to be healthy, but what comes under that? And so I'm, working on that end because I'm seeing this, it's nothing new, but accelerating trend of the global organizations. Like I said, the UN, the World Health Organization, the WHO, coming up with this pandemic treaty or whatever they're calling it, that's most likely going to affect next May. And then, whatever you want to call it, let's call climate change a pandemic. Racism is a pandemic. Let's call anything a pandemic. And then all of a sudden they have sovereignty over us, over every nation, in terms of rolling out their pandemic plan. So that's
everything becomes a right.
Really risking our freedoms with this World Health Organization.
So I think you're spot on. When everything becomes a right in a pandemic, and the World Health Organization gets to control and dictate what's a right and what's a pandemic, and all the individual governments get on board, none of us will have freedoms anymore.
So that's one thing that I think we need to really be contacting our elected officials about not funding the WHO, about exposing what they're doing, about exposing what President Biden is doing, all of the things that are going on behind this whole WHO before they actually put their plans into effect next May. So I think that's critical for us as a nation.
Where do you see, and my next question for you, you've kind of already answered, but I want to give you another shot. Mm-hmm. Where do you see freedom being lost in the next 5 to 10 years?
And with this whole WHO issue, I would say freedom of our own healthcare decisions, freedom of religion, like we've talked about, when we're calling things that are not biblical, when we're calling them a human right, then it becomes a legal issue, and so losing our religious freedoms there. And we see it happening so much. People almost joke about it now. I got my Twitter taken away. Well, not maybe there's Twitter anymore, but Facebook, whatever it is, or my social media taken away because of the censorship. So we're in that already, and I think that is going to continue.
And if people visit your site at jeannynigro.com, they're going to find more ways on things that you're doing to protect those freedoms and expose the things that the WHO is doing. Is that correct?
Well, it's not on there now, but I'm going to, after this meeting I just had, I said I'm going to work on that. Just putting together even like a 1 to 2 page fact sheet, because I think there's a lot out there, and we need to make it simple so that people take time to just take a look at it and get educated. They don't have to be experts on it, but just to know, hey, this is going on, and this is something that I should be contacting my elected officials about. We don't want to lose the sovereignty of this nation. Then we won't have any freedom. Something supersedes that Constitution, then nothing else matters. We have to uphold our Constitution at all costs.
Jeannie, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, exposing what we need to be aware of, but also for keeping on fighting. And thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to see you again, William. Thanks for having me.
We're going to do this again sometime soon. All right. I love having you on the show.
I'll be ready.
I want more people to know about you, because you're always a beacon of hope and light. You're always positive. And I think when people find out more about you, they're going to want to dig in even more about you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, William.
Thanks, Jeannie. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Mark McCloskey, how are we doing today, my friend?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I tell you what, I've got, I want to put your information up, here on the screen. I've got it all ready to put up, because I want more people to know about you. And when they hear about you today, I think that they're going to want to see a lot more about you. So talk to me. Where do you think that we're losing freedom in America?
Well, I think we have the illusion of a free country now, but we really don't. You've got the federal bureaucracy, which is no longer responsive to the people. You've got, for example, last week, the assistant director of the FBI just refusing to respond to Senator Ted Cruz. You've got the FBI just flaunting Congress now. You've got the Department of Justice refusing to answer questions. The only thing that keeps us a free country was respect for the Constitution, respect for federal law enforcement, and respect for the Supreme Court. And now we've got the DOJ and the FBI, which are basically just the enforcement arm of the deep state. And by the way, it doesn't make any difference whether they've got an R behind their name or a D behind their name. Vast majority of all elected officials are working to perpetuate their own power and the power of the people that fund them. And you can't trust them. I mean, in all due deference to all of our elected officials, nobody's standing up and screaming about all these different things. I mean, when the FBI raids Mar-a-Lago with machine guns, home of the ex-president of the United States, or for those of us that still support President Trump, current president of the United States, where's Kevin McCarthy? Where's Mitch McConnell? How come there weren't 49 Republican senators standing on the Capitol steps screaming, you can't have this in a democratic republic. You can't have this in a constitutional republic. Nobody said a word. I mean, it was crickets. And so now you have this court down in the District of Louisiana and Monroe Division saying that the federal government can't conspire with social media companies to censor us. Who would ever think that in the country of the First Amendment, it would take a federal judge to tell us that the federal government can't conspire with big corporations to censor us? And so we constantly tell ourselves that we're the freest country on earth. We've got a government that listens to all our phone calls, reads all our emails, reads all our direct messages, censors what we're allowed to hear and say, and is engaging in what I've called now for the last 3 years, coup by subpoena, where they're systematically arresting and harassing and driving into bankruptcy everybody on the right that they think poses a threat, and everybody on the right that they think poses a threat of helping Donald Trump get reelected president. And
you actually went through that yourself when you had that situation where the leftist or left-wing protesters attacked you at your home. I mean, let's face it, even though it didn't turn physical, thank God, you were still your privacy, your rights, and your property was invaded in such a way, and you've felt that backlash you're talking about since then, correct?
Well, and our reward for doing nothing more than exercising our Second Amendment rights. Nobody got shot. Nobody got hurt. 350 to 500 people were threatening to kill us and rape and murder my wife and burn down my house and burn down my office and even kill my dog. But our reward for defending ourselves was we got charged with 2 Class C felonies, each, which would have cost us 4 years in the slammer and our law licenses and everything else. We finally defeated that. And yet the Bar Association still said that what we did in defending our own property was a crime of moral turpitude and put us on a year's suspension and probation. And so I got my get out of jail free card February 9th of this year. My wife just sent in her paperwork today. But I mean, that's it. That's the tactic. There's
the same bar that upholds the law that's is in our Constitution said you cannot exercise your Second Amendment that's in the Constitution.
There's no constitutional rights under them. I'm kind of constrained in what I can say because the same Bar Association will take retribution. But the Bar Association is a political entity that furthers a political agenda, and that's a left-wing agenda. And you have to do what they say. You have to adhere to their political structure, or they will punish you. And the prosecutor that punished us was.
So you have felt it firsthand, the long arm of the bureaucracies, right?
Yeah, well, the weaponization of the power structure against anyone. There's only one unforgivable crime in America today, and that's standing up against the left. And if you do that, and you have enough following that people think you need to be punished for it, by God, you're going to be punished for it, whether you're the President of the United States or Roger Stone or Peter Navarro or Mike Lindell or people as low down the totem pole as Mark and Patricia McCloskey.
You've touched on something that my previous interview touched on also, is that what's happening is everything's becoming a right. Everybody is, and then of course the World Health Organization gets to determine what is a pandemic. And then of course, all these narratives and ideologies being seen as being protective human rights. If you don't adhere to those rights, you become the victim of losing your freedom in our country. So it goes back to, and what we talked about with Jeannie, is that when the bureaucracy gets involved, the deep state only gets deeper as a result of creating all these new laws and all this new regulation to be able to protect other rights that you don't agree with. Would you
they make up these imaginary rights? Who would have thought 5 years ago that there would be a phrase called transgenderism or gender affirming care, which is really a mutilation of children. And then they come up with a term that if you don't automatically agree in lockstep with this new subcategory of rights, then you're a transphobe and now you're a bad person. And so it goes as far as recently a school district in California suspended a couple of kids for 5 days for, quote, misgendering another student. How can you misgender students? People are the gender that God created them with. But these school kids were given 5-day suspensions for misgendering another classmate. And then after they serve their 5-day suspension, the principal has to give them a course in restorative justice, which by their own website means re-education. These kids have to go to re-education camp to learn how to agree with the social propaganda of the government. It's a religion. It is really a state-sponsored religion now. You have to believe what the government tells you to believe, or you will be punished for it. And if you don't agree, if you don't at least give lip service to believing in the state-sponsored religion of the left, then you will not be allowed to participate in society anymore. And that's a monopoly on power that we've never had in this country before.
And what's interesting about all this, though, Mark, is that if we went back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, where we just respected each other's freedoms, we didn't make each other's freedoms a human right. We just respected people's freedoms. Then we would have less government intervention, less deep state control. And I think that even the transgender people or the LGBTQ people would feel more freedom and liberty, because we're not fighting over whose liberties and freedoms are more important than the other. You hear my co-host in the background, by the
way. The philosopher Emil Durkheim called it anomie normlessness. The reason why we didn't need so many laws 50 years ago, I'm 66 years old. When I was a kid, everybody had a common morality, a common norm, a sense of values that they just accepted as a way human beings behave. That just because you could do something didn't make it something you should do or make it right to do it. And everything that's been happening in the last 50 years, actually it goes back more than 100 years, is to create social and religious and moral relativism, that there's no absolutes. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you get away with. And, there's no longer this cohesive sense of culture and heritage that bound us all together. It goes back to the basics of diversity makes you stronger. Well, tell it to the football team that goes out in the field. And if the quarterback says, y'all just go out there, do whatever you darn well please, and maybe we'll get the ball down the field, okay? You over there, you run wherever you want to. I'll throw the ball. Maybe I'll throw it towards you. Maybe I'll throw it backwards. That doesn't make any difference because diversity makes us stronger. But this diversity makes us stronger means that we need to dissolve all our moral bonds, all our norms, and then have the only parent that is allowed to exist, and that parent is the state, tell us what's right and wrong, and keep making more and more laws and more rules so that everybody is constantly a felon. Everybody is constantly violating some rule, because instead of having rules by common morality, we now have this huge bureaucratic state that is writing regulations.
And I don't think that the people that are on the left or the people that believe that adhere the narratives and ideologies really realize that while they're screaming for things to be considered a human right and to be controlled by the government, I don't think that they realize that they're putting their own freedoms and liberties at risk. Because to your point, when the state has full control over everyone's freedoms and liberties, we will have none. They'll pull them all out from us. What do you think that we can do to stop this and protect freedom in the future and stop this from happening or continuing?
Well, the Declaration of Independence says that this is a government by consent of the governed. First time in the history of the world. Government by consent of the governed. Everything bad that goes on, from child mutilation to the open borders to our unlimited support for Ukraine, all this happens because people allow it to happen, because we consent to it happening. If everybody just said no, if you recognize the fact that the federal government's not going to come and save our freedom because they don't like our freedom, if you accept the fact that your congressmen, your senators aren't really going to do anything to help us and maintain our freedom, then you come down to the only logical conclusion, that is, each and every one of us owns a personal duty to our Constitution, to our families, and to our future, to stand up for our rights and just say, hell no, we will not go along with these unconstitutional mandates. We will not keep electing congressmen that are in there to get rich and line their own pockets and support their big donors and their lobbyists. We'll throw them out. And you cannot count on anybody but yourself. And I start all my speeches this day with a question that says, how many of us believe that there's a political solution to our current crisis? And typically not a single hand goes up.
That's right.
And that's a serious problem.
Why do you think people aren't seeing it?
Because, take the 2022 elections, right? We have everything possibly wrong with the country. You've got a senile puppet as president. You've got open borders. You've got crime rampant. You've got deep funding the police all over the country. You've got huge drug abuse problems. You've got twice as many people dying every year from opioid poisoning as died in the entire Vietnam War. And you have a great opportunity to clean house and drain the swamp in 2022. And look what happened. Nothing, right? We now are in this situation. And by the way, you gotta appreciate how hard it is for me to believe that all the crime and evidence of crime that's out there about the Biden family, the fact that every time Joe Biden gets in front of a teleprompter, which he can't read, he says just the stupidest things. He gives away state secrets. He did today or yesterday, and yet people are accepting of it. Everybody needs to just wake up and say, wake up, recognize the fact that this is our last opportunity to save this country. That if you like freedom, if you like personal independence, if you don't like living as a slave to people that think of you the same way we think of bugs in the garden, then you got to do something. You got to do it right now. And the first thing you got to do is start at every school board meeting, every library board meeting, local government, because what they're doing is they're taking control of the minds of our children. And just like Stalin, and just like Mao, and just like Adolf Hitler, they want to convert our children into enemies against us and minions of the state, to be spies and to hate their parents and love the state. And
They're
that,
they're they're getting the older generation through the narratives and the ideologies and the guilt and the human rights and the pandemics. They're getting the younger ones. They're teaching them younger, so eventually they'll close that gap up. And everybody will be on board with their agenda. Where do you see freedom being lost in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't think we've got 5 or 10 years. I mean, when I was running for Senate here in Missouri the last 2 years, one of the questions from the audience would be, what do you exactly that question? What can we do to preserve our freedom in the next 5 or 10 years? And every other candidate would stand up and talk about how we've got to preserve our republic for our children and our grandchildren. I always say, no, we've got to preserve the republic in the next 6 months. I mean,
That's right.
If we allow the federal government to be a single party totalitarian state where they use the powers of the DOJ and the FBI to prosecute and destroy political adversaries, then we don't have a republic. We have a dictatorship. When you have the powers that be, including one of the justices of the Supreme Court suggesting that the Supreme Court's illegitimate and should be neutralized, should have its powers taken away, should have term limits, or they should be impeached, or we ought to pack the court with more left.
Right.
The Supreme Court doesn't have an army. The Supreme Court doesn't have a police force. All it has is a respect of the people. And once the federal government says you no longer have to respect the Supreme Court, you no longer have to suspect the only entity out there whose only job is to preserve the Constitution, then we have no Constitution. And we're out there on our wild lonesome facing a huge bureaucracy whose sole goal is to convert us to a single party totalitarian state a la Klaus Schwab. You will own nothing and you will be happy.
That's right. Mark, my next guest is waiting in the wings. So one last question. What are you doing to help preserve freedom in the future? What are you doing in your fight?
Well, we talk to every group we can. I've got a radio program and a blog that comes out of St. Louis. We're doing a big 2A rally on July the 19th up in Grand Rapids, Michigan with Kyle Rittenhouse to support the Second Amendment against its onslaughts and Christy Whitmer's government. We are trying to be everywhere to educate the people. And my message is the time is now to wake up. The time is now to take personal responsibility. Our forebears that created this republic were willing to risk everything, their lives, their fortunes, their reputations, to fight for freedom. And we have to each be willing to do the same thing today if we're going to save this thing. And I'm not talking about for 5 or 10 years. I'm talking about this year and next year. We got to do it now.
Mark, thank you so much. It's been always a pleasure getting a chance to speak with you, and I hope to do so again. We're going to stay in touch some more to help promote that radio show of yours.
All right, I sure appreciate it, and good luck, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Okay. Hey, Greg, how are you doing today, my friend?
Loving life. How about yourself?
I'm doing. That American flag with the eagle on the back, I think, is new.
Nope. I think I've had that. I bought that at a Freedom Fest 15 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, I've had that a long time.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. I'm gonna have to find one of those myself. So, well, you know what? I'm always loving having you on my show. It's like I always bring all these favorites I've got on because and my core is growing, and you're somebody that I added to that. Almost a year ago, and that's why I'm always bugging you. I'm like that little kid in the street that says, "Hey, I want everybody to come out, and play, and we're gonna, and all of you like-minded people, let's get together, let's solve some problems." And one of the problems I think that we're having right now, and in a few minutes, I'm gonna let you answer what you're doing to solve the problems. One of the problems I think we're having is that we are losing freedom in America, and we don't realize there's a lot of freedoms that we've already lost in America. You're by the way, in the background, you hear my new co-host. I just adopted a dog 2 weeks ago, and I brought him to the studio, and he hasn't learned how to be quiet when we're recording. So
that's awesome.
I'm going to post him later. But where do you think that we are losing freedom in America, that we've already lost it?
Boy, oh boy, that's one of those head scratchers. You think about what's going on in this crazy world of ours. And I was thinking about my dad, who graduated to heaven 14 years ago. He just wouldn't recognize our country. An Army vet, and what's going on is just incredible. And for me, I'm a small business guy, empowering small businesses and trying to give the control back to them, and kind of combating the big tech and trying to get people in control of their own e-commerce, of their own database, of their own technology, so they're not necessarily depending on other providers for that information. But I don't know, man, that's a tough one to go down that road. Like which pick a card, which card do you want to go down? Because our rights are just being eroded every single day. And you know what? The biggest one to me that I'm afraid of is just the police state of the DOJ, the FBI, and putting people in jail that should never even be considered going to jail. It's incredible.
Well, and what's interesting is like the January Sixers,
Yep.
if that's what you're referring to, there's a lot of people that think that they're guilty and whatever the case may be. But what's interesting is, that whether they're really guilty or not, I'm playing middle there for 1 second, is in our country, we have a right to due process. There are people who've committed murder and bigger crimes in this country that have gotten a faster, speedier trial, gotten their day in court before these J6ers have. So whether you agree with them or not, I'm not saying you personally, I'm just saying in general to people who might be listening, we have to realize that, when you look at how much time they've been in prison, they have not gotten their day in court. And so that in itself becomes a problem, because even if for those who don't agree with them or think they're guilty, there's, when you think of all the people in this country that have gotten their day in court, it's a big difference. What do you think that we can do to stop this from continue? What do you think that we can do to protect freedoms in the future?
Well, one of the things is we got to get out there and vote. We got to show up and we got to get out there and vote. And there's a new strategy that I've been researching that I actually came across on Twitter called the precinct strategy. Have you heard of this idea of the precinct strategy?
No, I have not.
So the idea is that all across the country, there's precincts, right? And from what these guys I'm hearing is there's over 200,000 seats that, America First patriots can go and take their seat on the local level, in the Escondido, California level. And from there, we start to really implement, the bottom up type of putting people in office. And supposedly the Democrats have really just got this whole precinct strategy down, and the Republicans are sitting on the sidelines. So to me, it's about, we have to get in the local school boards. We have to get in the precincts. We have to do stuff locally. And I am running this tech startup going, I'm already working 16 hours a day, but I'm going, I've got to allocate some time to this, because otherwise my kids and our future, they're not going to have the opportunity that we have.
I'm glad you brought up the on the precinct level, because I think that's part of that you're bringing it down the size. And I'm going to circle back in a minute to where your platform, how it offers freedom on a bigger scale, but on a smaller scale. The first thing I think we can do to fix our country is to start in our own backyards, our own community, or in the case what you're saying is our own precinct. And when you look at that, and you look at how on a precinct level we can change so much. On a precinct level, we can canvass our neighborhoods on a precinct level and find the bad registrations that are not good anymore. The people have moved out, and we can eliminate those from our precincts to help improve election integrity in our own neighborhoods. And like you said, we can elect people on a precinct level that make a bigger difference in there. Why do you think that people aren't seeing a loss of freedoms in America?
Mainstream media, right? Unless people are really tuned in and following, what's going on in this country via Twitter and some of the other, alternative news outlets, from, One
Right.
America's News to Newsmax to Real America's Voice, and just different talk show hosts and people like you that are bringing stuff to people's attention, they're just not getting that information. And then we're all caught up in, our day-to-day. Inflation's going through the roof. So now we're taking on second jobs and third jobs. People are having to work more, so they have less time to pay attention, because the gas, the food, everything's just going through the roof. It's incredible. So you think about that and you go, like my kids, she's my youngest daughter's 28. She doesn't have time to pay attention to this stuff. She's trying to figure out how to feed her child.
Let me tell you, so I've met her before at some of these conventions, and she is one of the hard. She's right from you. She's a hard worker. I've seen her working, working like crazy. So she's, and that's a work ethic, and that's what it takes in America to survive. And I think that's the other thing that's being taken. That's another freedom that's being lost in America is our work ethic. Because government, when they learn how that they can regulate freedom, they can regulate the pandemic, they can regulate the economy, and then they take away the work ethic. It takes away a lot of people's freedoms and liberties. Where do you see freedom being lost in the next 5 to 10 years?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because it's like everywhere you turn around. It's almost like you turn around.
Ever since I've known you, it's almost like it's right now when you say you don't know, it's instinctive for you. I've always seen you produce. You've put together a great company, LaunchCart, and it instinctively where I think that we're losing it in the next 5 to 10 years. Which is that why you started LaunchCart?
Well, absolutely. One of the things that got me to start LaunchCart is this whole cancel culture, where people with certain points of view were getting canceled, and their e-commerce stores were being canceled. And so it's like, I'm going to create my own platform, part of the alternative economy that says, hey, if you are doing anything, if you want to have an e-commerce and sell stuff online and be a digital marketer and sell stuff online, as long as it's legal, you can do whatever you want. Like the right to free speech, the right to sell what you want to sell, just don't break any laws. Right. And that's how not the world is working. And you see this cancel culture just going on. But I also kind of see it starting to twist back a little bit, like the whole Budweiser thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So we knew and we prayed and we hoped that it would boomerang like that. But I just am so upset about the kids, the trafficking, the LGBT stuff that's going on in the schools and these trans shows going on. It's like, look, the kids need to stay away from the kids, not walking down the street chanting, "We're coming after your kids."
And to your point, like I'm a freedom liberty guy. I'm all about anybody's freedom and liberty. They choose what they want to do. They pick what they want to do. I'm all about it. I'm okay with it. Whatever they choose to do, it doesn't have to be something that I like doing or I agree with. But where I draw the line is when you're forcing it to make it, as what Jeannie said in the beginning, a human right. That's a step further. That's a step in the direction where you're asking government to chip in and create rules and regulations that control everybody's rights. And when that happens, we all lose our freedoms and liberties. Yeah. What else does LaunchCart do to help protect freedom and liberty in our country?
Well, we want to put the power back into the entrepreneur's hand, right? So if you're going to be a small business owner and you want to succeed in today's world, it's about communication, right? There's this idea of communication, SMS marketing, email marketing, your website. You have to have that digital presence. So we have, and I don't know if we haven't talked since we launched this, but about 2 weeks ago we launched the LaunchCart CRM. It's a customer relationship manager program. It does SMS text messaging, it does email marketing, it does reputation management, it does social media planning, it does calendar scheduling, it does everything you need into one program. So if you had this program for your email marketing and this program for your text message marketing and this program for your calendar scheduling, you can get rid of all those tools and have everything into one tool. And as a small business owner, we want to empower you to have the control to communicate with your customers and your prospects, to serve them better and to generate profits and revenues for your business.
And that's exactly what I was hoping you were going to talk about too, because it's something that I've looked into, and it's something that I see as a way to protect freedom and liberty, in the years to come. And, it's interesting because I'm bringing on, I brought on some different people today. I brought on some, it's more faith-based. I brought somebody that is, you have a business. I got somebody else at the very end of the show coming on, and they have another really unique platform called Liberation Technology. They were also at AmeriFest, and they have a company that has another way of protecting business freedom, like you're doing, because you're not only protecting business freedom, you're also protecting individuals' freedoms that want to have a business or want to sell something that pertains to something that they believe in, as long as it's free and legal. Correct?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the other thing I want to add into that I'm kind of proud of and I feel good about is I'm about mindset and knowledge, right? So the idea is we have to have the right mindset. And there's so many negative things out there. You want to put yourself in a community with other like-minded people that can lift you up,
right?
And help you with your mindset that, that you can accomplish this stuff. Then transfer some knowledge to you so you can beat inflation, so you can beat the, and again, for me, it's a marketing, it's a business, it's an e-commerce side. We're transferring knowledge on how to be expert digital marketers. Like literally people that sit through my training, and I don't mean to say this braggadociously, and people can value, they can rate this themselves, but if you sit through my training 3 days a week for a month, it's like a PhD in digital marketing.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's good stuff.
Well, I just like the business freedom. So I like that, when I talk about freedom and liberty, it's not just individual liberty, it's business freedom. It's the freedom to get the word out there. It's the freedom to get the messaging out there. In your case, it's a product with your company. But one thing you touched on just a second ago, which I absolutely love, Greg, and I'm gonna steal from you, but I'm always gonna give you credit for it, is you talked about having the right mindset.
Yeah.
Do you think that having the right mindset is another way to protect freedom, your individual freedom and liberty?
Absolutely. Right. So again, there's this compound effect. That's another thing I love, is this compound effect.
Yeah.
If I want to lose weight, I've got to do small things done over long periods of time, right?
Yeah.
Consistently. So that's the same thing with our mindset. And if we all start getting defeated, which I've been there, and maybe you've been there. You get defeated, you just get so depressed going, I can't believe what happened with that election. I can't believe what they're doing in schools with second graders. I can't believe, you just so, but if we go down that negative mindset,
exactly right.
It compounds itself and gets worse. We all have to step up. We have to, like I said earlier, I got to do my part. You got to do your part. You're doing your part. We all step up, and we have the right mindset, and we have faith in God, and we trust that we can make a difference. Because if I believe I can make a difference, I can make a difference. If I don't believe I can make a difference, I can't. That old little train that would. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So that's part of the mindset. And we all have to work together and be around people that are going to lift us up, because it's so easy to get depressed with all the negativity going on around.
And we lift each other up with the right mindset. We're going to protect each other's freedoms. And I love that. We got my next callers on. One last question real quick. How can people find out about how to get involved with your company, Greg, LaunchCart?
Yeah, it's really easy. It's launchcart.com. Like you're launching a rocket ship.
Yep.
And then you're pushing a shopping cart. Launchcart.com. You need e-commerce. You need a CRM. You need a tool to take care of your online business. We'll take care of you. And mention that you heard us on this show, and I'll give you 2 free months.
I love it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Look, I'm gonna put it up on the screen real quick there. So that way people can find out about it.
All right. Well, I sure appreciate it, Wallace. And you have a fantastic day. And I'll see you at the top. I'm climbing up after you.
The next person coming up is somebody I'm going to introduce you to. His name is Dwane McClure, but I'll introduce you to him later on. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, Greg. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dwane, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. And you?
I'm doing fantastic. Were you able to hear that last part of that conversation?
I was.
Awesome. Well, let's see. We got, I'm going to edit. I want to put some things up because you got America First Pact. And I'm emphasizing the T because there's a one that is a pact, but you are a pact with a T, yes. Right? What's the difference?
So the difference is we actually stand for protecting America's Constitution and traditions. That's where PACT comes from. So while we do have a political action committee, there's more to what we do than just political action. For example, we have, candidates united across the country, helping each other get across the finish line. We throw in on training and resources and all that kind of stuff to help really breed the next generation of conservative thought leaders from the sense of, training them from the ground up. So a little bit more than just throwing money at a problem.
So let's talk about, we're talking about freedom and liberty, where it's lost, where we can find more of it. Where do you think that we're losing freedom in America?
I think that the most apparent place that we've seen a lack of freedom or a loss in freedom has been in the institutions. Most particularly, I think we've seen in the past week and a half, 2 weeks, the complete lack of journalistic ethics. And don't get me wrong, journalists are free to print whatever they want to print, but at the end of the day, to edit the truth is to deny people the information that they need to make the necessary decisions about their own freedom. So, in a way, journalists manipulating stories and ignoring stories that harm their worldview really is an assault on other people's freedoms, because how else do we form the world besides what we see and what we hear? Brother William, I'd be lying if I said that I heard you. I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. What do you think? My new buddy, my new co-host sees a friend in the background. Sorry about that. But what do you think that we can do to stop that and protect it from continuing what you just talked about?
I mean, honestly, I think that the biggest way we can stop that is to start turning towards alternative media. I can tell you that I personally have not watched much media outside of places like Real America's Voice, Newsmax. And then if I want to know a little bit more from a worldly perspective, because American media tends to be American facing,
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Right.
But if I want to know a little bit more about the world, I tend to go to their resources, and then I just make smart decisions and use all the information available to decide what I think is the truth. And honestly, often I've found that if you go somewhere in between, you find the truth. And if you
That's
find
right.
the truth, you make good decisions pertaining to your freedom.
Yeah, I tend to not stick to one news source. I tend to go to a lot of the local people, a lot of small shows. The smaller shows tend to work. They're independent. They tend to work a little bit harder. They tend to gather more information. They tend to be the people that are out in the public. They're the ones that are going to the local community, events. They're going to their local party events. They're going to their school board meetings. They're going to the lunches. They're actually the ones that are talking to people, gathering information. And when you listen to your gut and you pay attention to everything that's going on, you can usually figure out what's good, valuable, accurate information and what's not. And I think that's one of the best ways, to protect freedom in our country, is by being knowledgeable, having more knowledge or as much knowledge as you can, and gathering it up and, as you say, triangulate and finding the best one. Why do you think people aren't seeing it, Dwane?
Well, I think very simply put, is that a free and informed populace is a dangerous populace to tyrants.
Right. Exactly.
I think that we see in American media, I'll just go ahead and say it now, but the dumbing down of issues of very complex things into sound bites, and you see it both on the right and the left. I'm an equal opportunity truth broker. So you see it on the left and the right, is that things get reduced down to talking points and sound bites, and the real information gets lost. But I think I saw a study pretty recently that said somewhere along the lines of about 60% of Americans don't trust any institution that the United States has. They don't trust Congress. They don't trust the presidency. They don't trust the media. And you would think that if 60% of a group of anybody thinks that you're untrustworthy, that you do everything in your power to prove that you are trustworthy. But instead, the media continues to double down. We've actually seen it with the recent release of that movie, The Sound of Freedom, where they're calling it a QAnon conspiracy. And,
but yeah, I've seen that. Like, where did that come from?
And I went and saw that movie yesterday, and I got to tell you, I was sitting there almost with pen and paper, just trying to figure out where they were finding this stuff. And you have to be a conspiracy theorist to find the conspiracy theory they were looking for.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I love how you put that. But you're exactly right there. The media is coming. The media is another way we're losing our freedoms and liberties in our country, because when they're always in control of the narrative and the ideology, and they're always making people feel more oppressed, because that's what it's about. They have a way of, when let's just take the LGBTQ crowds come up a couple times, and look, and look openly, I'm a freedom liberty guy. If that's what you choose to live your life, I can say, look, that's not my concern. I mean, as long as you're not forcing it on me or my family or on other people in society, then that's your choice. And that's a very simple way of putting what I'm about to say is, but when they are told that it's a human right, they already have the freedom and liberty, but they change the definition to say it's a human right. That's when government gets involved. That's when bureaucracy gets involved. And when that happens, then nobody has rights, because it only allows government to get bigger and create more bureaucratic red tape that creates laws and regulations that protects a certain class of people. And the media is able to emphasize that, because it's almost like they're working in conjunction, because when the media makes their rights even more or seem more oppressed, then what happens is we all lose our rights.
Yeah. Well, you're a freedom and liberty guy, and I think that most of us people who are on the right tend to be. I define myself more of a Goldwaterist, and I know several people, when I say that, they're like, "Oh, but he was against civil rights," and I'm like, "No, he wasn't against the concept of people having inherent rights. What he was against was the government creating special rights for a group of people.
Exactly right.
When the Constitution is good enough to apply to everyone."
Did I ever tell you I met Barry Goldwater Jr.?
No, Barry Goldwater Sr.
Did I ever tell you I met Barry Goldwater Jr.?
Oh yeah, you have told me you met Barry Goldwater.
But finish your thoughts. Sorry about that.
But yeah, so the Constitution is good enough and whole enough on its own that it doesn't need the addendum of it's good for everyone, except you're black, so we've got to come up with a black rule. Except you're gay, so we got to come up with a gay rule. Like, if you apply the Constitution as it is written, as it is expected to be applied, you do not need to create special rules. The only reason why you create special rules is because government, by its very nature, seeks to expand. Government needs to be restrained. That's the thing, is that if government is not restrained, it ultimately restrains the people. That is the history of every government throughout mankind that was left unrestrained.
And if we continue to let the government and the media with their narratives be able to isolate everybody into groups with their own set of freedoms, protected from all the other groups with their freedoms, then the government controls all the freedoms and all the liberties, and we all lose.
Yeah, well, think about this, William, is that not only are there different freedoms for different people, but there's also different versions of truth. I've even seen people on the right say, well, this is my truth. I never use that phrase whenever I'm talking about something. There's my opinion, your opinion, and then there's the truth.
Exactly.
The truth.
Triangulating those news sources again.
The truth is concrete. It is what it is. Your opinion does not change the truth.
That's right.
And I think we've seen a society that's kind of fallen into that trap. Even many people on the right, I see candidates out there, not many that I've worked with recently, but throughout the years, that have adopted language like, I'm just speaking my truth. And I always correct them and I say, you don't have a truth, you have an opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
The truth is the truth.
Right.
So you can either speak your opinion or you can speak the truth. But you cannot do both.
So
the media is conflating the two intentionally.
So the media conflating it, government get involved, controlling it, ends up at a loss of freedom for everybody, no matter what your truth is, right?
Yeah. When you lose what truth is, it makes it easier to erode freedom.
That's right. Well, Dwane, I have a couple more questions before the next guest comes up here in just a few minutes. Where do you see freedom being lost in the next 5 to 10 years?
Honestly, I think that unless we really get a groundswell of good, solid, freedom-loving Americans to make the sacrifice and run for public office, not just picket, wave signs, vote. We've done that. It's had tremendous efforts, but we're at a point where we have a republic to save, and that means getting uncomfortable. For example, 2 years ago, we would not be having this conversation because I was totally fine with being comfortable. But I took a step out, and now I'm doing stuff like this every now and then, out of my comfort zone. But I see that because what we risk losing in the next 5 years is the republic. And I truly believe that left unchecked in 5 to 10 years, we could be presiding over the end of the American Republic as we know it.
If we don't all work together to protect our freedoms that we got right now. One last question, because our next guest is in the waiting room here, which is, what are you doing here in the next few months to work hard to protect freedom and liberty in America?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we're doing is we are throwing, we call it the American Conference, and it's a big conference that we're holding down in Galveston, Texas, down there at the Galveston Island Convention Center, where we're inviting conservatives and liberty-loving Americans from all over the country to gather together. We're going to have some amazing speakers, some amazing events, and we're really trying to, really inspire people to get involved, get plugged in, change their communities, and then, by changing their communities, changing America. In fact, our theme is connect, engage, impact, because that's really what we have to do over the next 5-6 years if we want to start turning things around.
Dwane, thank you so much. This next guest, I'm going to introduce you to him later on. He's another amazing person that's doing some things with his business to protect freedom and liberty. Dwane, we'll see you soon, all right?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, brother. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Working hard to save America. How about yourself?
I absolutely love hearing that. I tell you what, I've brought on a whole blend of people today. I got some people that are just content creators, that came on and talk about where freedom's being lost. I brought on you're the second business that I brought on today, because I think that we have to embrace businesses, that are doing the same thing for everybody's freedom and liberty, but in a business sense. But even bigger, you, like the last person, you individually, I know, are a freedom-loving American, and I've been keeping up with you. So how are you today?
I'm good. We're staying very busy, just fighting the battle one day at a time on, I think, what is probably the most contested front line, and that's in technology.
Well, I'm actually going to put up your business. I got to apologize. I actually, not apologize for this. I'm showing this. About 2 weeks ago, I adopted a new co-host for my show, and I thought it'd be fun to bring him to the studio today. But he is learning the ropes of the studio, and he hasn't learned the ropes to be quiet. So you might hear him in the background. But I'm gonna bring him up in a minute. You'll get a chance to see him. But Andrew, what is Liberation Technology Services?
Yeah, so we were founded right back in 2020 when it seemed like technology was just coming after all of us. And so Liberation Technology Service is an answer to many of the big tech problems, the things that people are always asking about, how they can get away from. So we are first and foremost our own cloud. So we operate several facilities here in the United States. So we're that first party, that first building block for anyone with an online presence. They can come to us and know that their data is protected. It's not being mined, monitored, or monetized. It has no access to AWS or Google or any of those platforms. And so we kind of have.
Well, you're kind of unplugged.
We're plugged in, but not into the big guys.
Okay, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and so we've built a variety of services, everything from hosting your website to providing email services to MailChimp like email campaigns to whatever it might be. We've really focused on building out the day-to-day solutions for people that find themselves under attack.
So you're providing for the people that have been under attack, that are getting deplatformed, you're basically offering them a place where they can put their content. What type of content are you storing?
So, I mean, we are doing everything from websites to podcasts to applications on the hosting side. We have our own version of like a Microsoft Teams or a Google Suite. So we help people store their file and collaborate, do video conferencing, chat, project management, that type of stuff, where we've got our own email marketing platform. So those that are getting throttled by the likes of MailChimp and Constant Contact. And then we even just recently launched our own no-code site builder. So very similar to the GoDaddies of the world, where you just kind of drag and drop and you launch your own website. We've got that in even email.
So you've got podcasting services up already?
Yeah, well, we don't have all the tools. We're working on a lot of the podcasting tools, but there's some big names that host their website, host their podcast, host their original video on us. Mm-hmm. And we've been in contact and are working with Christian and conservative studios, so they no longer have to worry about getting shut down by YouTube or Vimeo or any of those. They're able to constantly stream with us.
So now we're on StreamYard right now. So do you offer any a service like that?
We will very, very soon. We're rolling out some pretty exciting things.
I'm loving this. So let me ask you some questions that I want more people to know, to get to know you a little bit, because on my show today I've been talking about freedom and liberty where it's being lost. And a lot of people, when they think of where freedom and liberty is being lost, and the good thing about you being the last interview is that we get to be a little bit longer and really delve into it a little bit more. That was my reason for bringing you on last, which is a lot of people think in terms of our rights, like, oh, the Second Amendment, your First Amendment rights. But I don't think people really realize how many more of our rights we've actually lost or where we've lost them. And so that was the purpose of tonight's show, and the purpose of my Finding Freedom Forum when I ask people is, where have we lost freedom in America, in your opinion? And I get all kinds of unique answers, which is what I think people need to be aware of, is where are we losing freedom in America, in your opinion?
So I think we're definitely losing our freedom in the digital space. Obviously, that's why we got into it. But the scary thing is we're not losing it. It's not being pulled away from us. In fact, we're giving it up.
Ooh, that's unique.
We're giving it up and not even realizing it. Right. So if I know everyone does this. I do this, right? When, the app pops up and it's like, do you consent or do you not? Buried, no one actually ever reads that, but buried in that, it's just like, yeah, take all my data, do whatever you want, spy on it, access it whenever, any of that kind of stuff.
There's a South Park episode on that, by the way.
Yeah. And, Rogan's been talking about it. There's so many individuals, and this was a big thing that Musk even was talking about it. It's, with Threads, it's, hey, if you look at everything that you are consenting to on Threads or on TikTok, we're just giving all of this data away, and then it's really being used against us. And if I can kind of go back briefly,
absolutely.
The Trump White House, I really, I was part of the president's advance team. We were the ones going out and building all of these events and putting them into play. And if you look at the 2020 election, right, one of the places that I think, Christians and conservatives really lost ground was in the warfare in the front lines of communication. What is being presented? There was a study that came out right after the 2020 election that said something like 18% of Democrats, if they knew about the Hunter Biden laptop story, would have never voted for him. Right? That means that they never heard about it. That information was suppressed from them. And that's all because of these technology platforms are restricting the amount of information that we get.
And so, and well, We're going to talk more about what your company does to protect that. But what do you think that we can do to stop what you're talking about and protect it from continuing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's a multi-front campaign, right? And so, we've already seen conservative legislators and governors starting to put in GDP or data privacy policies. So, stopping these big technology companies from coming in and mining all of our data, making it more transparent where we have to actually opt in to sharing that information. But I also think that it's really a factor of what people are willing to do, right? If you're continuing to use Gmail, which is fine, you just have to accept the fact that all of that information is getting pulled in. They just
Right.
announced that they're using AI, so they're collecting all of this data. And then if you get banned because of an email, because they're sharing this cross-platform, that's on you. If you want to protect yourselves, you need to go out and utilize technologies and platforms, not just mine. There's a lot of great technology companies out there that are like-minded, that are aligning with your values, right? And so, you first have to start thinking about what information we're sharing. And if there's an option to get away from those big technology companies, you should do that. You should also turn off all of those permissions on your applications and everything else when it asks, do you want to share your location? Do you want to share data?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no. Right.
No, I mean, the amount of information that they collect on us. I know I was speaking with someone, their one company, they had 200,000 to 300,000 data points on every single American. And that's just a private company that, they know what kind of ice cream you like. And through technology, they can even start predicting what we're going to do before we even do it. They know what we're going to go buy probably next Tuesday. And that's what the scary thing.
What's interesting, it's parallel to what you're talking about is digital currency. I talk about how we need to fight to keep our cash as much as possible because they're trying to do a cashless society. And, you go to a business now, and there's some businesses that don't even take cash. And I tell people, like, if you accept that, I know you want to go to that particular restaurant or do that particular thing, but if we continue to accept that, and we get closer to a society that is a cashless society, not only are they data mining all of our data on all these sites by permissions like you're talking about, but imagine, if you will, them having control over what you spend. You can't buy that on this platform, and the government says, well, you can't spend that there. We pay your health care. You can't buy that ice cream. You might like chocolate ice cream, but you're only your digital currency will only buy the healthy alternative ice cream or the factory grown meat.
Yeah, based on this health information that we have on you, you're only going to be allowed to buy this level of product. So say goodbye to your ice cream and your cheap foods and everything like that. I've been to China during my time with the White House, and let me tell you, the amount of control, the amount of information that they have on everyone, and kind of the almost robotic like control and state that a lot of these people live in. It's not a lifestyle. It's not what our founding fathers intended for us. I believe that in some cases oversight is a good thing, right? Making sure that produce is not spoiled and things like that, but getting down to the point where they're leveraging the data to control every aspect, and then saying, down to our behaviors, what we can and can't do. That's, I think, a step way too far.
And also to your point, when you look at what other countries are doing, what we're slipping into, it makes it easier for them to create rules and regulations that not only control us, but control the individual groups. And like, I reach out constantly to people that I might not agree with their choice or their lifestyle or how they live or the freedoms that they choose, and I'll just say the LGBTQ community, which I've always said, look, I'm a freedom liberty guy. That might not be my choice. It isn't my choice. That might not be something that I agree with, but I can agree with their freedom or liberty to live that way. And what I disagree with is how the media is using the narratives and the ideologies to control people in the media, to convince them that they need a special permission or special protection from the government, a human right, if you will. And once we start giving government all these permissions from all these individual groups to protect each other's, right or human right, then they have control over all the rights, and they've got to segment it into groups. And also, going back to your point, using the data mining that all these different companies are using, they're able to corral everybody a little bit easier and control them. And when that happens, none of us have our rights or freedoms. So it's just better to easier to learn how to respect each other's freedoms and liberties to do that. Why do you think people aren't seeing it?
Well, first off, they're not being shown it. I think that's one of the main things that, media companies, technology companies, governments as a whole, if everyone's getting along, that's kind of dangerous for them. There's not much action, and there's, somewhat of a kind of a group harmony where things can actually get done. But by keeping people divided, by, making the other side seem like they're terrible people, you're going to get these clickbait reactions.
Right. And that's a great point.
It's easier to control. I think, here in the US, hundreds of millions of people, 99% of us are maybe only 1 or 2 degrees difference in ideals and viewpoints.
Absolutely.
Ultimately our end goal is for a healthy and prosperous nation. But, they focus on those, minute 1%, ultra left, ultra right. And then that's what the other 99%, sees, and that's how they feel ostracized. That's why, well, if you have an R next to your name, I've seen you guys on TV or social media that you guys, you're out to get me, right?
Exactly right.
In reality, everyone, for the most part, is just like, well, you live your life, don't impact my life, and we can all just get along. And that's a simple reality of society. But it's not easy to control people when they're financially stable, they have great family lives and things like that. There's that tension and division that has to be created, I think.
You brought up a good point a minute ago when you talked about clickbait. And you mentioned that when we were talking about the narratives and ideologies and what people think are their rights. Being in the technology industry, I just thought of this question for you. Being in the technology industry, do you see it in the technology world where they or the government or other technology services have better control over people that are beholden to the narratives and ideologies or their human right, if you will? So let's say, for instance, LGBTQ crowd is always talking about their human right and how they're being suppressed or how they're being basically censored in their own way or being stereotyped and ostracized from society by other groups. Is clickbait or these other technology things, is it hurting them or is it helping them?
I think as a society in whole, it's hurting them right now.
They don't realize it though. It's hurting them.
Right. But, when you, I think, realize it, in the fact that the world's not fair, it's not a unison place. I think that there are ways to make it, better for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, what we were working under the last administration was really trying to at least make everyone's life a little bit better. You're not going to be able to do that equally. Everyone's not going to have the same outcome or experience. But at the end of the day, there was a genuine hope to make things better. And so understanding everyone has hurdles that God puts in front of your life, right? That for us to grow and to become better. So do I think they have hardships and things like that? Yes, but we all do, right? I do think, though, from a clickbait perspective, if you look at social media as a whole, I'll go back to TikTok, and this has been talked about some, I don't think nearly enough. The algorithms will find those videos of, people clashing in the streets, and they will pump that up to everyone's new feed and keep it there. They'll find different camera angles and keep that going. That's here in the US and in Western society. Now, if you go over and look at the, in China, their version of TikTok, it's all very STEM focused. It's science experiments and, how to build a car and all these kind of things, where it's really being used for educational to improve their society as a whole. Right. And so you look at that, and that's just a manipulation of the algorithm. They still have that writing and stuff. Granted, it's kind of suppressed by the CCP, but we still have the STEM and the cool things, how to grow a garden, how to build a car, how to, become financially free. But that stuff from a algorithm standpoint, that's not good for us in society. That brings us all together, and that all makes us
they feed us the narratives and the ideologies and the bad stuff to divide us even further apart. And that's why I say it that way, is because, when you talk about the different groups, that are claiming that they're oppressed or whatever, and then you integrate the clickbait, and you integrate the technology and the permissions, how it's being used as a divisive tool, which is going to drive us further apart in society, instead of coming together on the things like you're talking about, like education and the things that really unites us to help improve our society.
And I think that there's a saying that I think is so true. It goes, tough times create strong men create good times create weak men create tough times. I think we're in that weak men, tough times, right? You look back at the greatest generation, 75 years ago. What were their adversities? Well, they were all getting shipped overseas, to go fight in the Second World War. They were truly on rations here in the United States. Their liberties and what they had to sacrifice were so much greater than what we have here today. And unfortunately, I think those good times have kind of, created a sentiment and kind of a reality in society where, every little thing might trigger you, and, the world has to be a nice and fair place, when in reality, unfortunately, it's not. They've tried the utopian society over in Moscow and in Beijing, and those always seem to fail. So, it really is about, just kind of sucking it up, overcoming your obstacles that are put in front of you, and pushing on and trying to make society as a whole a better place. We're worried about arguing with someone on the other side of the country on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, but
about how they're living their lives.
Yeah, but instead, we're not even really connecting with those that live right next door to us. So I think that kind of going back to it, the social media, the other technology platforms, they're meant to kind of keep us divided, because a connected, unified society is not good for their business.
Well, it's interesting when I've asked other people about why they aren't seeing it. They're always talking about how people are busy in their life, or they're busy or whatever. And you've touched on something in this, which makes me want to talk about, which is that what's being put in front. People aren't seeing our freedoms being taken away. They're not seeing the divisiveness, because they're constantly having other things put in front of them through these algorithms, or I say clickbait, and other things that keep us divided up.
Yeah, and I think that,
did you hear me?
Until we start to realize this is what's going on and start to move away, right? We're not really going to solve the problem. We're going to continue to feed into it, right? There are other like-minded companies that are out there that are trying to offer these solutions, but we're only successful from a business perspective, but also call it restoring sanity to the industry, if people elect to move off of them, right? And so, it's really important. I always say, there are companies, or everyone votes every 2 years, right? But that's not the only voting we can do, right? You're voting every single day with your wallet by supporting companies and businesses, right? You look at Public Square, they have created a phenomenal platform that allows for you to support local businesses, right? You look at Red Balloon, which allows for you to go work and support and bring your talents to companies that are ideologically aligned, or hire folks that are, going to actually benefit your company. We recently announced that we're partnering with American Cloud, right? Another conservative cloud technology company. And in most worlds, it would be like, well, they're your direct competitors. But we realize that we are up against industrial titans. So we've got to lock arms.
Exactly, right.
Together, right?
Well,
that's the way.
It's kind of like I've talked about with other podcasters, other radio shows, other influencers. I don't look at anybody at any of them as a competitor. I look at all these people as we need to lock arms together, and the more we help each other, promote each other, the more we get more information out there. And look, and not everybody's gonna have accurate information, not everybody's gonna have exact information, but it's going to be from the heart. It's going to be more research. If you're just trusting the main news, or the mainstream media, as if some people like to call it, then you're not getting the truth either. But when you bring it home to the smaller shows, these are the guys that, like me, we're going out into community events. We're talking to people on a one-on-one basis. And if we lock arms with other podcasters, other influencers, other media people that are small like ourselves, together we're getting more truth out there. And in one way, to your point, we're voting with our voices. We're getting more people informed.
We still live in a capitalistic society.
Right, exactly.
We've still held on to that, and that is ultimately the way we impact change. I see it all the time. People are pissed off about getting platformed and censored, and their data being mined and all these kind of things. But it's like, what are you doing about it?
And your business helps stop all of that.
Right. And so we're just one link in the chain that will ultimately lead to the solution. But it's really important to spread awareness. Support each other. The amount of back and forth and cross publication and things like that we do with these other technology companies, that's important, right? And other great organizations that are out there fighting for our freedoms every single day.
I've been asking everybody in previous interviews, where do you see freedom being lost in the next 5 to 10 years? But my question for you, I'm gonna kind of change it up a little bit.
Hey, curveball, let's go.
Oh, there's no curveball here. It's basically just a little bit different. Where do you see freedom being lost in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see it being saved in the next 5 to 10 years? Because I'm gonna take a positive road here, because after talking with you, your company is showing some avenues for that. And I want to ask you, where do you see people waking up, or where do you see freedom being saved in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think that it is call it the alternative economy, right? And I believe that if you look at, Bud Light, Nike, all of these different companies that have decided to push a political ideology, right? They're ultimately losing. They're losing billions and billions of dollars every single year, and making it so that companies like myself, like Public Square, Freedom Square, Red Balloon, American Cloud, all these different companies. I mean, you go on Public Square and there's thousands and thousands of options, right? Thousands and thousands of options. It's making a gap for us to come in and actually penetrate the market and actually start to gain real market share. And I believe that, through both legislation and good old capitalistic economy, that's where we can see things being saved. I think that, there's probably 150 million Americans that would probably all agree, like, hey, I don't want my data being sold. I don't want my device listening to every word that I say and then immediately start pumping me ads and doing who knows what else, right? You start looking at the introduction of AI. You look at what Elon Musk and all the reporting around the Twitter files has revealed.
Right.
The amount of data that they're collecting on us, and then what they're doing without anyone, providing oversight, without anyone electing these individuals, it's terrifying.
Right.
Right. And so I think that, through legislation and through, companies like Liberation, the American people have to vote. They have to make a decision what they're okay with and not okay with. And I think that at the end of the day, there's 150 million Americans that say, this has all kind of gotten out of hand.
Right.
Whether it just being like, hey, my email sends and no one's reading my email except for the person I sent it to. Right. And it's simple things like that, that we see people every single day waking up to. And I do think that, especially in this 2024 cycle. I think it's, 2020 was bad.
Yeah,
2022
exactly.
was a little bit worse, but I think if you look at the policies that the left has run on and the candidates that they've got, there's only one way that they have a snowball's chance in hell of actually winning, and that's leveraging technology. And granted, we got the ruling that said, hey, the government can't work with technology companies, but do we really believe that's going to be the case? I mean, the DOJ has
Right.
already filed appeals saying, no, we want to work. Don't look at what the Twitter files revealed.
Yeah, don't look at that. Don't look over there. Look over here.
Don't look at that. Don't look at what we actually did, but we got to work with these guys. And, there's a certain level of national security that is acceptable, I think.
Mhm.
If there's any red flags, yeah, we should report it. But at the end of the day,
Refer to the Patriot Act.
yeah, but, obviously
which stole freedoms.
yeah, unfortunately, they're not very good, because how many unfortunate situations have we seen that these mass shooters and whatnot, they'll start talking about these things that should be raising a red flag a week in advance, and no one's alerted, and these unfortunate situations happen. But as I was talking to a company the other day that we're hopefully going to be helping out, they posted something on YouTube and just kind of said, God sets your self-identity and kind of things like that. And with under 500 views on it, right? So not enough for people to report it and trigger it. It was already banned by YouTube. So they're focusing their Twitter, and it was like a matter of hours. But yet we have these terrible events, and they're like, oh, well, we couldn't stop it, right?
Yep. I got a video taken down. Actually, I've got like my my fourth triple strike on YouTube from a video that was a candidate in the state of Washington who didn't even bring up anything about elections, any ideologies. He just talked about himself and just good government and good policies. And but I think somewhere in there he mentioned he wanted election integrity. And because of that, boop, I got banned. I got suspended for a week or 30 days or whatever it was. But I want to give you credit for a really good thought you gave me a few minutes ago. I was talking, and I want no, I love this. You gave me something that I'm gonna use more often now. I love it. Yeah, which is, I was talking about how all the small platforms and small media and influencers need to work together, arm in arm, locked arm in arm, because it creates a force to be reckoned with, we'll say. You brought up something which is on a parallel note, which is, how businesses are getting more opportunity, because the big tech, like, Bud Light is, now losing so much money because they've been exposed, Target, all these other companies. But what's happening is it's making a lot of room in the marketplace for other entrepreneurs, for smaller entrepreneurs to get into the marketplace, to give more voice and more options for not only consumers, but for freedom and liberty in America.
And what's the funny thing? We're not even exposing them, right? It's not like someone's creating a secret recording of a closed room meeting. Right. They're putting it out there. Right. They're shooting themselves in the foot kind of situation, because they don't realize that a large majority of the Americans don't want political ideology shoved down our throats, or kind of crazy concepts. Why can't we get back to the basics of just enjoying a beverage, or watching a game, or going to school and getting taught quality education, or going online and if you Google something, you get actual real results, and not something that's tailored and biased one way or the other. Right. At Liberation, that's kind of where we stand. We look at the cloud, the internet, as a utility, right? We believe that in today's society, everyone should have access. As long as you're not breaking the law, we don't care, right? So we service left, right, center, apolitical, very political. As long as you're not breaking the law, as far as like the clearly defined laws that our Constitution and our elected officials have laid out, that's it. We're not deeming, hate speech, because that's not a real thing. There's no clear defined language around that. And so, that's not something that should be left up to private companies to determine.
So is your cloud separate from? I look. This is just. I look. Some people are on the information superhighway. I'm on the information dirt road.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting on the gravel road, but but
Yeah. No. Hey,
so is your cloud separate from all the other clouds?
it does not touch Google, Amazon, any sort of big tech, or any other tech. The only one that we work with right now is American Cloud, as I mentioned, and we're putting together a multi-cloud where it's clear and transparent. Hey, do you want to use Liberation? Do you want to use American Cloud? Do you want to use both? Giving you that extra level of resiliency. Right. And so, our cloud is, I think, pretty robust. It serves up tens of millions of visitors every single month globally. We have the technology to see where it's going. We've got people all the way in New Zealand and Australia getting to enjoy the content or the services that our clients are providing.
So your company is really focused on freedom and liberty and independence, and people being able to choose something without with having their privacy violated. You're protecting privacy, privacy is freedom, and you're really working hard, with other companies that want to do the same thing.
Oh, 100%. We believe in transparency too. Transparency in information, transparency in pricing, transparency all the way around. What you see on our website is what you're going to pay. It's not like a GoDaddy or an AWS where at the end of the day, oh, wait, you've got $5,000 in overages. Guess what? You're now responsible. And we see that all the time. And so, we believe that, Liberation and a lot of these other companies are really focused on restoring sanity to the industry. And so that's what we're focused on.
So, Andrew, when we finish up, I'm going to talk to you off camera for a second, but let's tell everybody how they can find out more about Liberation Technology.
Yeah, so liberationtech.com, right there on your screen, that brings you to all of our services. You can go online right now, select the products and services that you want. They'll deploy instantly, just like any other service provider, which is a pretty cool thing. And then, we're Liberation Tech on all of our social media platforms. And so you can find us, stay up to date. We've got chat, we've got email. You can get a hold of us pretty easily through our website and all of our social media.
I love this. And you appeal to not only individual businesses, of course, but individual services too.
Oh yeah, if you want to ditch Gmail and you want to get Liberation Mail, we got you. Granted, we're not mining your data, so we're going to charge you $1 and change every single month. But because you're paying that, we're not going out and selling your data, because at the end of the day, in a capitalistic society, nothing's free. So if you're getting a product for free, you really are the product.
So if I've had an email with Gmail or, with GoDaddy or whoever, I link it to you guys through your service, and I can have the same email. It's just protected.
Exactly.
Same with the website. If I've got a website who's been hosted by whoever, I have you all hosted, same address, everything. Now it's protected.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a simple migration. One of the cool things about, our site builder actually is you purchase it, but instead of having to build it or transfer everything over, it has a cloning feature. So you type in your URL and it'll go out to the internet, scan your current site
now.
And it's pretty good. Granted, every platform's a little bit different, but it'll get 95% of your current site. You might have to re-upload a photo or something, but it does make it really easy for you to migrate. And, that's kind of where we have focused on things, because it has to be easy. It has to be common sense.
Well, you're making it easy to protect your privacy and your information. You're making it easy to, at the same time, to protect your freedom and your liberty and your ability to have the privacy.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it being a capitalistic society, it has to work like our competitors, right? It has to be at least a similar experience. Granted, we're still growing. Our users are great, and they have a little bit of understanding and a little bit of grace, but we're constantly rolling out new features, new updates, almost weekly. And so we're really working hard to not only get it at par with our competitors, but to actually go beyond and present a better product and experience. And guess what? No one's selling your data.
After getting a chance to talk with you personally and hearing about your company, I think it's gonna be hard for other competitors to keep up with you guys.
You know, we're on a great roll. We've been incredibly blessed by the doors that have been open. We have some phenomenal clients and also partners, and we've got some really cool stuff that we'll be announcing here in the next year or so that will, I think, really make that big step to digital independence at scale, so we can really go head to head with AWS and Google and all of those guys, and it's really about a decentralized cloud. And so, you know, that's what we're working on hard behind the scenes. But when that happens, it's going to be too late. We're going to be on a path that it's going to be tough for competitors to catch up to us.
I love it. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on with me today. I really appreciate it.
I know I appreciate the opportunity for coming on, and anytime you need us,
I'm gonna have you on again, because it's impressive. It's impressive to see somebody like yourself, who I know from me talking to you personally, seeing you at CPAC and talking to you on a personal level. And that's one of the things I wanted to get out today, is for people to see you on a personal level, not just the business level. But it's impressive to see somebody who's able to take their personal beliefs and do the hard work that it takes to relate that to a company that's going to do the same thing for other people. And I really appreciate it.
I know. Thank you, and look forward to joining your show again.
Hang on one second while I close out. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Please, share this video. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it on Rumble. You'll also find it on all podcast apps. And also, please check into Liberation Technology Services. You're going to love what they do. Thank you all so much, and have a great day.